Good morning.
Morning.
Yes, today we'll be working with the shoulder girdle, and we've learned things during our training about working with the shoulder blade and coming under the shoulder blade like that. But we really haven't done much with the whole shoulder girdle, which is the clavicle here, and then attached to the clavicle is the scapula. This, so right there, you can see a scapula. Thanks, Bobby. And up and right here you can see the clavicle. And it forms one unit that you can see it just hangs right on top of the rib cage. So the first thing we're going to do, yeah, we can put this back down, Bobby. You don't really have to hold it up. There we go. That should work. The first thing is to find a position of support where the person doesn't feel the weight of the world on their shoulders. So there can be a lightness and the ease of breathing. And a nice way to do that is you can take your palms and just kind of slide right under, and then you can go right under the armpits and find that place between the arm and the scapula. And what you're going to think about is find that easiest way. And you're going to find it maybe a little forward and a little up, but you're going to find a way just to give this shoulder blade a little bit of a lift. And then you're just going to keep it here supported and look for a change of breathing. What happens is once you take the weight of the shoulder girdle off the rib cage, it makes it much easier to breathe in the upper part of the ribs. And then once you can see the breathing change and the person soften, then you can start to play with finding the pattern. So I can go a little this way, a little that way. And I'm feeling this is his pattern. And we can just kind of work with the whole shoulder girdle in this easy pattern. Yeah, I'm seeing if I can get the pattern to go all the way through. I don't know if you can see down, but the pattern is going all the way down through his foot and up to his head. So we got that going nicely. And then once it feels like this pattern is in a really nice groove, then we can start to explore maybe the opposite way a little bit. And then other little patterns, forward, up, circles. So we're just kind of exploring new, different patterns within.
Wait, can you demonstrate again forward and up?
Forward and up, yeah. Okay, we're gonna let him rest for a moment. So what I'm thinking about, because his shoulder blades are forward, I'm thinking they may have to come a little bit more forward. See, if I pull right up like this, I can feel tension and he doesn't want to go. But if I come a little forward, then it's easier to go up. That's what his pattern is. If I go like this, there's a lot of resistance if I just pull his shoulders straight up toward his head. But if I take it a little forward, I can find out if I go forward and up, that's the easy movement. That's the easy pattern. And I'll have you do this with me, Bobby. And then from there we can slide our hands, rather than working in this area, we could actually slide our hands under the shoulder blades and work with the shoulder blades themselves. And as you can see, I have my whole palm pretty much right on the shoulder blade there. And then we can start exploring in the same way, and we could even work on differentiating a little bit. We can keep one shoulder in place, move the other shoulder. So there's wide variety of things that we can do to go from there. And then once you have everything moving nicely, right, then we're thinking about connecting the movement of the shoulder girdle with the whole body. And right now I have my hands under the armpits, but I could also like put my fingers on the ribs a little bit. I could also play around with the ribs here a little bit. So now we're integrating the movement of the shoulder girdle with the shoulder of the ribs. Yeah, it's pretty cool when you do that, Bobby. So these are just some of the ways that you could work with the shoulder girdle, start to integrate that into the student. And then from there, if you want, you can go to work with the head, or if you want to do things with the arm, connecting the arm to the shoulder blade, to the movement of the ribs, you can go from there. Many, many different things you can do.
You demonstrated on the left arm because I think it'll pick up.
Oh, you think that will work better on a computer? Sure, yeah. Right, so we're just kind of finding the arm, finding how we can get the shoulder blade.
Yeah, much nicer.
Yeah. And then you can see, oh, we're getting a little movement in the ribs. There we go. So that's just some of the ways that you can work with the shoulder girdle, and then continue to integrate the movements of the shoulder girdle with the rest of the person. Martha, you have any questions? I guess
Mute
not.
myself. Here I am. That's very clear.
Very
Don't
clear. Okay, good.
question.
I mean, just stop the recording here.
Wait, can you just quickly show like your hand position for lifting the head and behind the neck?
Yeah. Okay. So you can lift the head different ways, right? One way Leora showed us is you take the point where the head touches the table and you replace the table with your hands. I have one hand over the other hand, right? And then I can just think of just lifting the head lightly. And again, finding the pattern in which the head lifts and then feeling how far down it goes. Now, the nice thing about this is once you start here, then what you can do is you can move one hand off and you can find C7 in the neck a little bit, and then you can work with both of these at the same time. But that's something different. We'll do that another time. We'll go into detail on that another time. Today's basically about the shoulder girdle.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think I'm going to stop this.
A shoulder blade
Yeah.
time before when we were going over finding the shoulder joint,
Mhm.
I think it was for a different way of working with the shoulder, but I'm trying to remember that and connect it to this. And
Okay.
the idea was you could come up the arm from the elbow,
Yeah. Yeah. So,
like, you know,
this is two different things. Here, I'm underneath the shoulder joint and I'm working with the whole thing. And the
yes,
shoulder joint's included with that. But if I want to differentiate, and by the shoulder joint, we're talking about the glenohumeral joint. So we're talking about the ball here of the humerus, and we're talking about this glenoid fossa of the shoulder blade here. We're talking about this specific joint. And
Yep.
way Leora showed us was you find the elbow, and if you run up the elbow, that helps you find the back of this joint. And that's what I'm looking for right here. You can see the scapula here, the ball of the humerus here, or the head of the humerus here, and my fingers right in between those two. So
Yeah.
I'm right between the two bones in the joint. And then once I find that, and then hopefully you could see my thumb, then I'm going to try to find the front of the joint here. And it's easier to do when you have the arm lifted like this. If you have the arm like this, you can just follow
Yeah.
right down here. And you'll feel, if you move the arm a little left and right like this, you'll feel a folding someplace back here. So you find that folding thing with the one finger. There I can feel a little pinching and folding. And then you feel for the folding here. Okay, and then
Thank you.
once you
Yeah.
have this joint, right, you can have them move together, or you could differentiate like that.
Hmm.
Together up, together down, differentiating up and down. And then finally, you can work with the circles with that. And that would be a nice thing to do too. If you wanted to focus on this area, the nice thing about this is you're working with the structure, the whole big structure here.
Is it still recording?
Yeah, it's still
I'm
recording.
sorry.
But you're working with the structure here, and you're getting all of it to go in a nice way. And then you may decide that you want to differentiate some of the joints in the shoulder girdle area, which in case this one is a really nice one to do. Because for a lot of people, some of these shoulder movements aren't very clear. And then, and then there's also the collarbone, right? We have things that we do in between the ribs and the collarbone here that we can do. We have the one that Arlen showed us here, which is nice, this gentle little pressing here, and that's going to help differentiate the rib cage from the collarbone.
So if a person has frozen shoulder, is this,
Frozen shoulder means that this joint here, it doesn't want to rotate in the joint here. So this movement is stuck
so
here.
so this is not the Leora movement is not something you want to do. You want to go distal.
Yeah. And what Mia did, remember what she did in her beautiful mentoring session online when she had the person take their hand like that, right? So what you can do if somebody has a frozen shoulder is something like this.
Oh, that's beautiful. Okay.
Yeah. Or, you could come right under here and do this. Because what happens with a frozen shoulder is once we feel that this area isn't functioning properly, our nervous system tends to shut everything down. So now this whole shoulder blade's holding. So it's not here, it's also here holding. So if you can get this moving, the shoulder blade moving and functioning again, now this shoulder is getting some movement here. And getting the movement in the shoulder blade is going to take strain and stress off this GH joint. Because if the shoulder blade's not moving, now this has to do even more, which is putting more stress on the joint that's already having problems. So being able to get the shoulder blade moving and functional again is really important for frozen sholders. Okay, so Janet had a really good
You'll see when you go
statement
to look at it, but
about practitioner, how they're going to organize themselves to do the movement. And for some people, this isn't comfortable. This is what I call the Mia position, because a lot of times when Mia's working, she'll have her legs up on the table like this. But what I like about this is I could have you can see my elbows are supported on my legs. And now my arms are supported. And it's a different feel. If I have to hold my arms up, it's more work. If I just have them resting on my legs, it's a lot less work. And then what I can think about doing is just moving all of myself. So to lift the shoulder, I'm just thinking about sitting tall. And then if I want to move it in a pattern, I'm thinking of doing like a seated pelvic clock. And that can get me moving in these little patterns in a nice way. And the nice thing, because the movement's really coming from my pelvis in the center of me, I can keep my hands very soft and very light. Whereas if I'm like this with my arms up, there's a tendency for the hands to get a little hard. Now, if that doesn't work for you, and you can't put your legs up like that, what you could also do is you can maybe even just put your arms on the table and use the table for support. So I can, this way works for me too. I could also work in this way. And you can see we can move this guy pretty well. So find a guinea pig and just experiment and find out what works for you. But the idea is the more comfortable you are and the easier it is for you to work, the more comfortable your student's going to feel, and the faster all of this will organize within the both of you.